Hi everyone, I'm Mizrahi here. This is the Mizrahi Perspective. Welcome. Today I want to talk about some of the more serious and heavy stuff that is being said on behalf of Israel in defense of this genocide. Stuff like it's being done to defend Jews, and it helps Jews somehow, and it is the Jewish interest to do it and defend it the way it is being done and defended. And I want to challenge this very strange logic. I think not enough is being done to challenge this logic from Jewish circles. So I'm going to do some of this today. And I'm going to talk about the picture behind me and what Israel is doing in the Gaza Strip as part of its fake aid effort, which is a new law for Israel and the US because they are doing this together. So I'm going to talk about this as well. But before I touch on all those heavy subjects, I want to focus your attention for a minute on something else, which is related. Everything is related. I want to remind you that a few days ago, Donald Trump forbade Harvard University to enroll foreign students, which are a big chunk of Harvard's student population and a big chunk of its budget and its influence and reach and finances and standing and so on. But this hardly made any news. And this was funny to me because if Trump had done something like this in 2017 or 18, we would see 5 million Americans taking to the streets, carrying slogans, shouting, screaming, singing, making speeches, all the famous actors. And we would see huge parades on all the big streets in American cities. But now we see none of it. Now we see none of it. And this is, so much has already been normalized. This is hypernormalization. Things that just a decade ago would create a huge uproar, a huge scene, now just happen 5 times a day, and no one blinks an eye. This has become so natural. And what I want to say about this, I don't care about Harvard too much or American higher education. As I've said a few times before, and I'm going to keep on saying this, higher education that supports genocide doesn't deserve to exist. And it is right and moral to seize its existence because it serves no purpose. Education without morality is a danger to society and to the world. So Trump is doing a good thing, from my perspective, destroying American higher education, not for the right reasons, but still it's a good thing that he does anyway. But what I wanted to say about this is that by supporting Israel's genocide, the Democrats and the entire liberal establishment in the US, which is a humongous apparatus, okay, of a billion institutions and publications and media outlets and research centers and think tanks and whatnot, okay? It's a whole industry of liberalism, quote unquote. When they decided collectively to support Israel's genocide, when they began suppressing protest as anti-Semitic, what they did is not only they helped Trump to get elected, they also gave the Republicans the keys to their own destruction. Because now Democrats and liberals cannot really be against what Trump is doing in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. They cannot identify publicly or psychologically or any way with the people they themselves portrayed as anti-Semites, as people who are motivated by the hatred of Jews, which is complete and utter nonsense, okay? The percentage of people who are motivated by the hatred of Jews is maybe 0.5% on a very bad or good day. Depends how you see the world. But they helped create the myth that anti-Semitism is this huge American phenomenon, which is such an idiotic take on reality. I mean, when have Jews been discriminated against in the US? When was any law passed forbidding Jews or preventing Jews from doing this or doing that? When were Jewish religious rituals banned? And we know other minorities, other groups who have been delegitimized and outlawed, okay, and banned and kicked out and segregated against. So this connects with not the last video I made, maybe the one before that, with the shadow, the German expressionist shadow of the 1920s, creating a reality that is completely based on the imagination of the ruling elites. It has nothing to do with reality. And this whole anti-Semitism craze is part of it. But anyway, liberals cannot take a side against what they represented until a few months ago. So they have given the Republicans the keys and the way to dismantle them. So this is just an opening remark about how to see this particular element. And this is part of the reason we are not seeing American opposition to anything Trump does, nothing major, because everything is now portrayed as fighting anti-Semitism. This makes me laugh because it's a joke. But it's all fighting anti-Semitism. And Trump can basically dismantle and destroy the entire American government, way of life, economy. As long as he calls it fighting anti-Semitism, it's okay. No one is going to fight it. Man, this is funny. This is funny. I'm becoming serious because I'm looking at this picture behind me, and this is not funny. This is not funny at all. And I made a habit as part of my political or cultural analysis or critique to always say things in a very simple way. This is very important. To use simple words to describe what's going on and to call it by its name. Because we often have this instinct to use big words. And what Israel is doing with the aid, I mean, it cannot surprise us. I have this horrific memory from last year, and I'm sure all of you remember this incident with the aid trucks that they shot above from a drone. There was this footage from a drone and then night footage, and people looked like ants, and they killed maybe 100 people that night who were trying to get some aid for their families. Israel has been doing this all along. This was the first instinct on October 7. Israeli officials said, we will not allow food in, and how did it make sense? How was Israel not stopped on October 7th? How wasn't it made clear to Israel that if it takes this direction, it's going to be in breach of international law and in danger of sanctions? This should have been said and made and clarified to Israel on October 7th, that it is something that it cannot do. But we're closing on 2 years of this, and still no one made this clear to Israel. So they are playing psychotic games, and maybe they think that we're not seeing this. But we are seeing everything. Everything is transparent. Everything is clear. All the tricks, the big and small, sociopathic tricks that Israel is playing on Palestinians, starving them and then fooling them with the promise of aid, only to kidnap them and torture them and scare them and extort information from them and organize bands of looters that will steal the meager amounts of aid that Israel allows in to help Israel create this myth of chaos. Did you notice they are now using the word chaos to describe what's happening in the strip? It's always chaos, chaos. And it is chaos that you are meant to understand as something that the Palestinians are causing. The Palestinians are doing this, the chaos. I mean, the level of psychotic propaganda and dehumanizing, but this is not the point that I wanted to talk about. This just gets me worked up. The level of planning and collaborative effort that Israel is dedicating to destroying and breaking the Palestinians, this is the point. This is the point I want to make. We need to think about a society that has hundreds, if not thousands, of officers, generals, all kinds of branches of all kinds of security enterprises. And they sit and plan and have meetings and have spreadsheets and presentations about how they are going to break the Palestinians and starve them and use aid to promote the ethnic cleansing and the reputational destruction of Palestinians. Can you see the sickness? Can anyone miss the sickness? Can anyone miss the sickness? Can you even imagine how sick this society is? How sick this society is. This is not a task a normal society can accomplish. This is something that goes deep and far back because they had the infrastructure in place to do all this. They had the branding, they had the planning, they had the means, they had the ways, they had the budgets, they had all the necessary bureaucratic mechanisms required to enact something like this. This is a whole culture of not only genocide, but genocide in the most obscene, despicable, vile ways that anyone can imagine, with thousands and thousands of people working, doing this, going to work every day, planning how to destroy and starve Palestinians. This is apart from the torture regime, apart from the detention regime, apart from the assassinations, the drones, all of this. Do we even get what this means and what this says about this monster of an entity? This is a subculture dedicated to evil and dedicated to breaking down evil. And go on about carrying it out with the smallest details defined, with everything worked out in advance, and everything connected. The messaging, the branding, the media, the military. Can we understand even what this is? I cannot think about this without getting such a cold feeling. This is so crazy. This is so crazy. And they think that any of this is hidden from sight. They think that we can't see it, even if we don't know the details. And I don't know all the details. I'm deducing from what I see, from what I know, from a little bit of experience that I have. But you can see all of it very clearly using your intuition and your 2 eyes and ears. You can understand that this is not spontaneous. This is not spontaneous. Which leads right to the next aspect of it I want to talk about. Because all the time, when people talk about Israel or Jewish society, what they almost always say, or without almost, what they always say is how much fear and trauma there is in Israeli and Jewish society. We are always, I say we, I should say you, but it's all of us. We are instructed, indoctrinated to always see Israeli and Jewish society through this lens of trauma and fear. And we should always understand, be very understanding of all the intricate psychological processes Israelis and Jews go through. They have a soul and a psychology. We are constantly reminded in a history. And I have to say something about this because this is so wrong in so many ways, on so many levels. This is so wrong. First of all, do the Israeli soldiers in Gaza look scared to you? Does Ben Shapiro look scared, full of fear? Or Shmueli? Or any Israeli ambassador, representative, spokesperson? Does any of them look scared? Traumatized and scared? I mean, you've seen scared people in your life, right? You have seen scared people. We look at Gaza and we see scared people. We see people cowering in fear and shaking and crying. We see what people in fear really look like. But even if we had never seen Gaza, when you look at Israelis and Zionist Jews who speak for Israel, they are not afraid. Sometimes they pretend to be afraid. They love this show of they are so afraid, but they don't look afraid and they don't act afraid. Okay? A population held by fear and fearing so much for its existence and its life doesn't act this belligerent and this almost flamboyant in its murderousness. This is not fear, this is overconfidence. I don't see the fear. On every international questionnaire or research of the happiest population on earth, Israel always ranks very high. So where is this fear and trauma that people automatically associate with Israelis and Jews? Where do you see them? Where do you see them? Violence towards other people is not fear and trauma. It is violence and aggression. Okay? We should separate the two. It's not the same thing. But on top of that, what do Israelis have to fear? They are the most secure people on this planet. There more resources, more American resources are dedicated to defending and securing Israeli lives, Jewish Israeli lives, not Israeli lives. The word Israeli has no meaning. It's another word for Jew. No one talks about 1948 Palestinians and Israelis. We don't mean that when we say Israeli. America invested trillions in defending Israel. Its military stands by every minute ready to defend Israel. Airplanes and ships land here every minute with weapons, bombs, equipment, whatever they need. And not only that, another lie that is said along those lines of fear and trauma is that Israel lives in a very tough and scary neighborhood. Very tough and scary. But I want to remind you that Israel has peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan. And Israel has good ties and relationships with almost all Arab countries. The last time Israel had a war with a major Arab country was 50 years ago, when it fought Egypt and Syria in the Yom Kippur, the 1973 war. Syria is broken. Lebanon is so heavily infiltrated. The only thing that Lebanon can stop is an Israeli invasion. Lebanon is no threat to Israel. But even that is not enough. Israel, let's just say it this way, is in possession of some extremely explosive materials. Very serious, that make big explosions, big serious explosions, which its neighbors don't have. And many other countries in the world don't have. So what is this fear and trauma discourse based about? It's fiction. It's not real. But I want to go even deeper than that. why is it that only Israelis and Jews are ever spoken of as entitled to feel fear and trauma? This is again so funny. This is so blatantly false and fake that it makes me laugh. You see how Palestinians live. Forget the genocide. For 100 years, Zionist Jews have been allowed, encouraged, protected while coming to Palestine and doing whatever they want with the Palestinian population. Kill, assassinate, ethnically cleanse, massacre, drive out, criminalize, destroy, infiltrate, spy on, whatever they want. So how are the Jews the ones suffering from fear and trauma in this context? Why are we never talking about Palestinians in terms of fear and trauma? Has anyone ever spoken about Palestinians as suffering from fear and trauma, except in the context that they were bombed 10 minutes ago? But this is not what we're talking about. And I'm going to expand this further. What other group that we know has ever been spoken about in terms of suffering from fear and trauma? Have you ever heard anyone speak about Black people as suffering from fear and trauma because of what white society has done to them? Because of centuries of enslavement and the most horrific abuse and torture and psychological warfare and stealing of babies and destruction of families and communities and any kind of insanity and atrocity you can imagine, Black people suffered at the hands of white society for centuries. I've never heard anyone speak about Black people deserve certain privileges because they have suffered so much fear and trauma. I never heard it. I never heard it. I never heard anyone saying Native American communities. They are these are actual victims. They are victims. And some of them still exist here and there in very small numbers. Some of them still exist. And still their lands are being stolen from them to this very moment. The tiny, tiny portion of the land that they got to keep, America still chews up bite after bite of it. To this very moment. Has anyone ever spoken about them as suffering from fear and trauma? And there are so many other groups. There are so many other groups. I will talk about just one more. And this is going to surprise you because no one ever says it. But this is so obvious. Russians. If you think about what Russians suffered in the last 200 years, 200 and change, I'm talking about only the major events, the big ones. Napoleon almost destroyed Russia completely, okay? With an invasion of millions of soldiers. Big historic trauma. The First World War, big historic trauma. The Civil War, big historic trauma, millions of casualties and dead, and destruction of property and societies and communities on a major scale, major scale. And World War II, with more than 20 million casualties. Has anyone ever spoken that you heard of about Russians deserving of special privileges and tolerance and license to do some certain things because of their historic trauma and the fear they suffered? I never heard it. Never heard it. For some reason, there is only one group of people that we ever hear this discourse about. And I'm wondering, I'm more than wondering, if within the context of one big culture and one conflict, talking about only one side as suffering from fear and trauma, always just one side. This is really saying only one side has a human soul, has a full human psychology. This is what is implied by it. When you talk about the psychology of just one group of people all the time, and how sensitive they are, and all the intricacies of their inner world, you create the impression that the other group doesn't have that. They don't have a personality. They don't have a psychology. They don't have a past. They don't have an emotional and communal memory. So this is not about humanizing Jews. There has been no need to humanize Jews for a long time. This is about dehumanizing the Palestinians and dehumanizing other people, which are never spoken of in those soft and understanding and almost loving terms. I heard this today on the LBC, caller show, the British radio show where people call. And some dude called and said, a British Jewish Israeli guy, and he said, there are wonderful people in Israel, but they are genuinely traumatized and in so much fear. And this made me talk about this in this video, because people say this all the time. But what is this based on? Israelis, as I've said, are the most secure group of humans on this planet. No one is more secure than them. I mean, think about the life of Lebanese people, Iraqi people, Syrian people, Libyan people, Somali people, Sudanese, even Egyptians. I mean, look at the region. Look at the region. Look at the map. Look at all the places the US invaded at the behest of Israel. Think about how people live there and what do they feel? What kind of deep existential insecurity they feel? Why is this never spoken of? Are they not full people to risk something like a Shakespeare play? Are they not real people? Do they not have a full human psychology and emotional world and emotional memory and communal memory and trauma and fear and pain and all of that? This kind of discourse is so deeply racist. It's so deeply racist. I hate it so much. I hate it. when it is implied that one group of people is more emotionally, psychologically complex and sensitive than other groups. This is like the first the first thing, the first element of creating a racist consciousness. This is how you do it. And by the way, white societies do this all the time. White societies do this all the time. Every time. And I've noticed it from my Jewish Arab perspective in Israel. And it's not only about Israel. It was never only about Israel for me. But it was almost a joke for me. I would always look at Haaretz, for instance. And I would always find stories about rich white people doing supposedly exotic things, climbing the Himalaya, diving the oceans, jumping cliffs, because they are rich and they are bored and their life is meaningless. But they are presented as heroes, as as pioneers and as visionaries. And they are just rich white people who have the media at their disposal. And you see this in the New York Times, and you see this in Hollywood movies, all the white characters. Now I'm being dragged into another topic, but it's the same topic. White characters are always presented as having a lot more depth. And you're made to feel a lot more sorry for them and to identify with them, because what they go through is so, you get swept away by it. It's so dramatic. But it's only white people. And this is how they create the racist notions that we carry in our minds, including brown and black people about themselves, because we consume the same culture, the same cultural products. So brown and black people start to believe this, that they are less complex psychologically and emotionally. But now I'm drifting away completely. I want to move on to the last bit I want to talk about today. But before I talk about it, I have to address something. I have to say it once in every video I make, because I just have to. And I saw people mentioning it in the comments. There's no way to send super gifts or anything that relates to monetization on my channel, because I have been permanently demonetized. I cannot have any finance-related features on my YouTube channel. And if you want to support what I do, you can use the Buy Me Coffee app. The link in the description to this video. It's always going to be there under all my videos. And you can use that, because I've been permanently demonetized, which I almost like in a way, because I'm not sure I love to be part of this culture. But this is another story. The final thing I want to say today in this video, and I hope it's not getting too long. I don't feel it's too long. The final point I want to attack is the amazingly absurd and ridiculous idea that's being hammered into our brains, that what's happening in Gaza and what Israel is doing, and Zionism in general, is done for Jews, and it promotes and defends the Jewish people, the Jewish cause, the image of Jews, the reputation of Jews. I don't know, all of this, because this is what they say all the time. If you speak against this, you're a self-hating Jew, which I've been called a million times. So this last section of my video, I wanna say as a question, because I want someone to explain to me. Seriously, if anybody can. And I invite anyone who thinks they can do it to try. Okay? Explain to me how any of this is good for Jews or humanity, but let's put humanity aside, as we so often do. How is this good for Jews? How is this defending Jews? How is associating Jews with what we have seen happening in Gaza? How is this good? How is this good for Jews? I want someone to explain this to me. How is making Jews the foremost legitimizers of child killing, of mass population extermination, as they openly say? This is not me saying. This is open Israeli propaganda. This is what ministers say. This is what members of the Knesset say. This is what prominent people on Israeli media say. This has been documented 1,000,000 times. So how is this? How is associating Jews with this kind of derangement and cruelty? How is this good? Or how is this good for Jews to create a culture of censorship and intimidation where people who oppose the horrors of Gaza are being persecuted and threatened, and they are in fear and trauma. They are in fear and trauma because they are under threat. They can lose their job, they can get demonetized, they can get canceled, they can get deplatformed, they can get fired, they can get their whole life ruined for opposing a genocide done by Jews, defended by Jews, enforced by Jews. How is this good for Jews? You Zionist Jews are saying that this is done in the name of Judaism and Jews. So I want you to explain to me, a very simple Arab Jew, not a great, very simple. So use simple words and explain to me how what we see in Gaza done by the Jewish state, defended by Jewish lobbies in Western countries. Explain to me how this is good for Jews. Because maybe you live under the illusion that you will be able to provide a private army for every Jew for the rest of history. And you will be there with them when people will scream at them, you child murderer, you genocider, you baby killer. Who's going to be there with them? Who's going to be there with their children and grandchildren and grandchildren? Because people are never going to forget this. Never. Never. Will AIPAC be there with them? Will ADL be there with them? Will the IDF be them? Everywhere on this planet, everywhere that they go? Is it good for young Israelis to be seen as potential mass murderers from now till forever? Is this good for how is this good? Explain to me how this is good. I want to use this video to address all of you who defend Israel and defend what it's doing and defend this government and defend Zionism and defend and defend and defame everybody else and call me a self-hating Jew and others like me. But you should explain to all of us how this is good and beneficial to Jews. Maybe once and for all, you should explain how this is good for us. I'm waiting for your explanation. Thank you.